In the fading light of a dying empire, the guns of August 1914 roared across Europe, shattering the fragile peace that had held the great powers in an uneasy balance for decades. What began as a regional conflict in the Balkans ignited a continent-wide inferno, one that would not only redraw maps, but devour economies from within. The world had never seen warfare on this industrial scale, where entire nations mobilized their factories, farms, and treasuries for total destruction. As soldiers marched to the front lines with flowers in their rifles, few understood that the true battlefield extended far beyond the trenches, into the ledgers of banks, the warehouses of merchants, and the kitchens of ordinary families. The conflict promised glory and swift victory, yet it unleashed forces that would collapse the economic foundations of empires, leaving behind ruins that echoed for generations. The air was thick with the promise of heroism, but beneath it stirred the silent machinery of financial ruin. Before the outbreak, Europe basked in an age of unprecedented prosperity. The Belle Époque shimmered with electric lights in Paris, bustling stock exchanges in London, and the rhythmic clatter of trains linking industrial heartlands. Factories hummed day and night, producing steel, textiles, and machinery that fueled global trade. In Germany, the Ruhr Valley glowed with the fires of heavy industry. In Britain, the pound sterling anchored the world's finances. In Russia, vast grain exports fed the continent. Daily life moved to the steady beat of progress. Workers clocked in at dawn, merchants negotiated in smoke-filled cafes, and governments borrowed confidently against future growth. Children played in cobblestone streets, while their fathers read newspapers boasting of colonial riches and technological marvels. This was a world of visible abundance, where the invisible threads of international credit and gold reserves seemed unbreakable, binding nations in a web of mutual dependence. Yet this golden era masked deep vulnerabilities, as military alliances and imperial ambitions simmered just beneath the surface. Early warning signs flickered like distant lightning on the horizon, invisible to most, but ominous to those watching the ledgers. Arms races between Germany and Britain strained budgets, with naval construction programs devouring millions in public funds. Tariffs rose as nations sought to protect domestic industries, subtly fracturing the flow of trade. In the Balkans, localized conflicts hinted at the powder keg awaiting a spark, while diplomatic crises over Morocco and Bosnia tested the limits of alliances. Economists noted rising national debts, but optimism prevailed. After all, modern economies were too interconnected for prolonged war. Factories retooled quietly for potential munitions. Gold reserves shifted nervously between central banks, and whispers of mobilization plans circulated in hushed government corridors. The average citizen continued routines, baking bread, tending fields, balancing household accounts, unaware that these invisible pressures were eroding the system's resilience. No one yet grasped how quickly credit could freeze when trust evaporated in the heat of conflict. As tensions escalated into open war, rising instability spread like cracks through ice. Mobilization drained labor from farms and factories, halting production of civilian goods while redirecting resources to the front. Blockades choked supply lines, German U-boats prowled the Atlantic, sinking merchant ships laden with food and raw materials. Inflation stirred as governments printed money to fund the endless appetite of war machines. Families in Paris queued for bread as prices climbed, while in Berlin, coal shortages left homes cold and dark. Soldiers' letters spoke of mud and death, but back home, the economic strain manifested in empty shelves, black markets, and growing resentment. Alliances that once promised strength now demanded total sacrifice, pulling neutral nations into the vortex. The rhythm of daily life fractured. Factories operated around the clock under dim lights, women entered the workforce in unprecedented numbers, and governments imposed rationing that tested social cohesion. Still, leaders assured victory was near, even as the true cost mounted in unseen balance sheets. Key decisions sealed the fate of economies already groaning under pressure. The Schlieffen Plan's failure turned a hoped-for quick war into a grinding stalemate, forcing nations to commit ever greater shares of GDP to destruction. In Britain, the suspension of the gold standard freed monetary policy but unleashed inflation. In Germany, the Hindenburg program centralized industry under military control, prioritizing shells over sustainability. Russia poured resources into ill-equipped armies, neglecting agricultural reforms that might have sustained the home front. Loans from America propped up the Allies, but at the price of mounting debts that would haunt post-war recovery. Mistakes compounded as generals demanded more men and materiel, ignoring the breaking points of supply chains and public morale. Pressures from within, strikes in munitions plants, mutinies in trenches, revealed how war eroded not just wealth but the social contract binding citizens to the state. By this point, the conflict had transformed from a clash of armies into a voracious consumer of capital, devouring savings, infrastructure, and future productivity. The moment the system began to fail arrived not with a single cataclysm, but through cascading breakdowns that spread like contagion. In Russia, by 1917, hyperinflation ravaged the ruble, as war expenditures outstripped tax revenues and printing presses worked overtime. Transport networks collapsed under the weight of military requisitions, leaving grain rotting in distant provinces while cities starved. Factories fell silent, as raw materials vanished, and workers, fueled by revolutionary fervor, abandoned their posts. Similar fractures appeared elsewhere. Austria-Hungary's diverse empires strained under ethnic tensions exacerbated by shortages, while Ottoman finances buckled under Allied blockades. The silence of idle machines and the growing clamor of bread riots signaled the tipping point. Governments, desperate to maintain the war effort, resorted to ever more coercive measures, seizing crops, conscripting labor, confiscating assets, further alienating the populace. The economic engine that had powered the pre-war boom now sputtered and seized, its gears ground down by the relentless demands of total war. Human consequences unfolded in scenes of profound social breakdown. Families in Petrograd huddled in unheated apartments, trading heirlooms for meager rations as children scavenged streets littered with refuse. Soldiers returning from the front found farms ruined by neglect and inflation that rendered their wages worthless. Unemployment surged in shuttered industries, while black markets thrived amid official corruption. Fear replaced routine, whispers of revolution in taverns, the distant rumble of artillery mingling with the cries of the hungry. Women, once symbols of wartime resilience, now bore the brunt of managing collapsing households. Trust in institutions evaporated as governments defaulted on promises of victory and prosperity. Looting, desertion, and political violence became commonplace, tearing at the fabric of society. The conflict that began with patriotic fervor ended in despair, where survival supplanted ambition, and neighbors turned against one another over scraps of food. This was the human face of economic collapse, not abstract numbers, but empty stomachs, broken homes, and shattered futures. The long-term historical impact reshaped the global order in ways few could have foreseen. The Treaty of Versailles imposed crippling reparations on Germany, fostering economic instability that fueled extremism and set the stage for future catastrophe. Russia's imperial collapse birthed the Soviet Union, an experiment born from wartime ruin that would dominate the 20th century. Across Europe, borders redrawn and debts unresolved created a fragile peace built on sand. Economies rebuilt slowly, haunted by lost generations and destroyed infrastructure, while the United States emerged as the new creditor nation. Colonial empires weakened as resources drained into European battlefields, accelerating independence movements. The war's economic scars influenced monetary policies, welfare states, and international institutions for decades, proving that conflicts do not end with armistices, but echo through balance sheets and policy decisions. What was destroyed in 4 years took generations to mend, altering trade patterns, technological priorities, and the very nature of state power. Yet even as ruins cooled and treaties were signed, the ghosts of economic collapse lingered in the collective memory. Abandoned factories stood as monuments to miscalculation, their silent halls whispering of potential squandered on destruction. Survivors carried the weight of lost savings and interrupted lives, passing stories of hardship to children who would face new crises. The conflict revealed a harsh truth: economies are delicate constructs, vulnerable to the ambitions and fears that drive nations to war. In the quiet aftermath, leaders pondered the cost: trillions in today's terms, countless opportunities forfeited, while ordinary people rebuilt amid the debris. The process of collapse had been gradual, almost imperceptible at first, but its consequences proved irreversible. etching lessons into history about the perils of unchecked militarism and fragile interdependence. In the end, the conflicts that collapsed economies serve as a haunting reminder of humanity's capacity for self-inflicted ruin. Beneath the grand strategies and battlefield heroics lay the quiet erosion of wealth, stability, and hope that no victory could restore. As new generations rise amid their own tensions, the faded photographs of breadlines and idle smokestacks urge caution. The world that emerged from the ashes was transformed, yet the underlying vulnerabilities persist. Interwoven finances, resource strains, and the seductive pull of conflict. One can almost hear the distant thunder of artillery in today's headlines, a faint echo warning that the next rupture may already be unfolding in ledgers unseen. The collapse did not announce itself with fanfare. It crept forward on silent feet, forever altering the course of civilization.